Hey there YouTube, welcome back to another episode of Mortal Realms Monday. Today we're going to be doing the Nighthaunt chainrasps from issue 1. But just before we get started, I'd like to obviously thank you all for joining me today. And you may have noticed a change in the channel name. From Art Ninja Gaming, I am now Rogue Painter. The reason being is when I started the channel and Twitch streaming, I was focused more on gaming than the painting, and after a few months of doing the gaming with the painting, I found that the painting was a little bit more popular with you guys, so I basically changed the channel name to be a bit more appropriate to what the content of the channel's future will be, focused more around miniature painting. So without further ado, let's get started. Right, so to start off with, we're going to use some Ironbreaker. You can use any kind of metallic silvery paint for this, and we're just going to do all the silver areas, all the metallic areas, the sword, the chains, and you know, stuff like that. Obviously depending on the miniature that you're painting, this will vary slightly. Some of them have axes, some of them have multiple balls and chains. Some of them with, I think they've got stockades, you know, they're in stockades and stuff. So obviously, depending on where you're painting, you're going to want to change slightly. So we'll just water this down just to get it a little bit thin. I'm just going to put a nice even coat over everything. Don't worry if you go onto the handle there, the hilt. Obviously that's going to get a painting anyway, and we'll do that part with Balthazar gold. So this is probably the quickest and easiest way that I've found to paint Nighthaunts. Let's just give it a quick run over of a few basic colours. I think in total we're using maybe 8 colours, 8 paints, so it's quite budget friendly. Excuse me, quite budget friendly. And when you're painting, you know, a huge horde of these things, then it's nice to get them down as quick as possible, as basic as possible. You know, if you've got 10, 20, 30 of them on the table, you're not going to notice that they're not overly detailed and painted anyway. But you know, you save that for your character models, your squad leaders and things like that. No need for basic troops like this to be done in a huge amount of detail. So just get this metal put on and then we'll be back. Right, once we've got all the silver areas done, next we'll move on to the Balthazar gold. So again, put a small amount down on the palette. You don't need a lot for this one, that's probably a bit too much. Just wet the paint down slightly just to get it to apply a bit easier. And for this we're just going to do the guard of the sword here. Obviously try not to get it on anywhere you don't want. If you do, just go back and touch that area up. And obviously if you've got axe handles and things like that, you can do that in this, or you can do it in a wood type colour, up to you. I think we'll do the bottom of this just to break it up so we haven't got so much heavy silver everywhere. do the same with the ball, and then the cuff around his wrist, and just get this ring here where you guys are here. Get it in from the other side. The cuff around his wrist here, and then once I've done this and the ball, we'll come back. Right, so now we have that done, it's time to move on to the greenish, I suppose you call it the ghost himself. And for that I'm going to do this with Ethermatic Blue, which is a contrast paint. And all we're going to do is get some of this, put it onto our palette. We'll need quite an amount of this. Right, and all we're going to do with this is cover the entire model, everything that is white, with this Ethermatic Blue. And just let it go over everything, seep into the recesses. This will give you a nice bit of depth. Get it all over the white areas, and that will give it a shade. This is almost like glazing. Which is another technique of changing the colour of something. If you aren't quite happy with it, you can glaze over and change the tone and the colour slightly. So obviously that's all we're doing with this, but it gives a really nice effect of this sort of ghostly phantom type look. Obviously you can change the colour depending on what effect you want for your ghosts. I find this is a nice sort of turquoisey, greeny blue. Nice technical term there, but it does give a nice haunting effect. And what I tend to do is try and pull these larger pools up towards creases and the top more than the bottom of the miniature. I want more white at the bottom, so just pull all this up, and you will notice it will try to pull down at the bottom, just because it's a very thin colour, and obviously gravity likes to do its thing. I know some people like to paint the arms, hands and face on these in more of a skin tone, but to me, you know, the whole figure is a ghost, so I don't see why it would have skin on it, but obviously that's personal preference. So for me, just go over it with this and get it a nice even coat all the way around. And get him looking very ghostly. I may need to apply a bit more on my palette, but I'll finish this and get back to you guys in a second. Okay, so now that we've got all of that done, we're just going to quickly paint the stone at the base there with some Eshin grey. So a small amount of that, don't need a lot. And just thin it slightly, and then just go over this slab. It doesn't have to be overly neat. Right, once that is done, next step is for the hood. I'm just going to do all of this, and for that we will use the Citadel Technical Nightwaunt Gloom. So give that a bit of a shake, and again we'll apply this to the palette. Right, and then just go over the entire hood and try and get a nice smooth coat. May need to do a couple of layers for this one. And this applies very similarly to the contrast paint, but it is slightly thicker. Right, so we'll just give that a couple of minutes to dry, and then we'll put back. Right, once that's had a time, a bit of time to dry, we'll go do a dry brush with ceramite white. So all we're going to do is take a small amount of this with any kind of flat brush, or if you have the Citadel dry brush, or any kind of dry brush. Then get the majority of the paint off. Still a bit too much there. Try not to get it in the wet area of the paper towel. There we go. And then we're just going to give it a very light dusting over all the lower area of the model here. Just to try and pick up all the edges and sort of the raised areas, and also over the cloak here, again just on the edges. tend to focus this more on the bottom areas to try and get it almost white with a slightly green undertone, and then as we get further up the model, less focused, and keep it literally on the edges and the very highest peaks. Obviously don't forget the underside. And any of the smaller ethereal ghostly areas. With this I tend to do the opposite way around, lighter on the top and then less of a focus where it comes out of the ground. Obviously don't forget the face as well. There we go. Well, there's just a couple of things left to do, and that's to put a quick wash of non-oil over the top of the hood here. Just get that to sink down into the recesses. This will darken it up, but that is fine. Obviously just be careful not to get it on the ghostly areas, and the highlights will show through this. The idea with this is to get a thin coat over the flat areas just to darken it, but let it collect and pool up in the recesses. And what this will do is it'll darken the hood, but it will also give some depth in those darker areas. So obviously like this, we want it nice and thin. And then in these areas we'll let it pool up a little bit. And there we go, and when that dries, some of that Nighthaunt gloom will show through a little bit, and that will tone it down. We can also do the chains and any of the silver areas, and as you can see, that adds a ton of depth. Picks out all those little recesses, making it look much better. There's one chain. Try and get the chain all the way up inside this particular model. Now you can see I'm using quite a thick brush here, quite a large one, and this is so that it soaks up a lot of this non-oil and allows me to deposit right into the areas that I want just by pulling across the chains. There we go. And then we're going to take some Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to do the same thing but with all the areas that we did with the Balthazar Gold. so this won't be as harsh a colouring as the non-oil would be. And as this is a brown wash, that will give it a dingy brown look, make it look a bit older. Right, and then ever so quickly we're just going to do a quick dry brushing of Dawnstone over the slate there. So get the majority of that off the brush. We're just going to give it a very quick rough dry brush. Doesn't have to be anything perfect. In fact, the rougher and more random the better. And there we have it. Our Nighthaunt chain rasp is ready. So all he needs now is just for you to put some sort of basing on him and add him to the rest of your horde, and he is ready for battle. So there you go, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more like this, hit that subscribe button, and make sure that bell's checked, and you'll get notifications of when I upload new videos. Mortal Realms Monday is obviously every Monday, where we'll do a review of the previous week's issue magazine, and paint up of the miniatures that came with that issue. So right, thanks a lot, guys. I'll catch you next time.